How you guys doing? My name is Dan. I'm the Jazz Shepherd, as I'm sure most of you will know by now. If you enjoy the content on this channel, please subscribe and tell your friends about it. We're on part 2 on my series on my jazz records being filed by label. And it's something you can only do when you have a large collection, obviously. It doesn't have any additional benefit if you have just a small collection. Alphabetical will be do just fine. But if you really want to get a broader context of the innovations in jazz, where, when, who was being innovative, when, to have your labels put on the sequential release numbers is very insightful on a lot of levels. I discussed a lot of that in part 1. In part 2, I'm going to give you some examples of records that I never liked, where I had to file these under an alphabetical system. And for starters, we're going to look at this Three Trumpets record. You file it under Farmer, under Bird, under Suleiman. Doesn't really feel right under any of those circumstances. Do you file this one under Suleiman, Webster Young, Coltrane, Bobby Jasper? Where are you going to put that? It's when you file it as 7112 and 7092, it's in the exact context, and it also informs you when these guys were on Prestige. These Impulse collections, where are you going to file those? You can have just a miscellaneous section, but you'll never go there and play that stuff. You know, again, the context of understanding when these musicians are on these labels is only enhanced by the fact that you have these collections informing you of that. A label like Emercy does a lot of these type of deals. It's a trumpet record, all the different trumpet stuff, different artists on the label, compilation, Alto Altitude. And they do one for all the instruments. They have all these different instrument compilations. And where would you file those in an alphabetical system? They don't really fit in very well anywhere. Here at Savoy, the music of Charlie Parker. This has a whole bunch of different artists on it. It's not really led by any one guy. Pretty for the People. It's arranged by A.K. Salim. It's got all those artists on it. Where you file that alphabetically? Again, it's not clear, but when you file them by their sequential numbers, 12118 and 12138, they just fit where they belong. These Bethlehem records, there's 10-12 Bethlehem 12 inches that are mere collections of 2 10 inches, and the two sides are completely different artists with completely different sessions with completely different sidemen. And so where do you file? We brought our axes when one side is Hank D'Amico and the other side is Aaron Sachs. It doesn't fit under either of those artists because there's another artist on the backside. When you file it as B7, it's right where it belongs. This Petterford record, it has Vinnie Burke on side 2 because these are 2 10 inches. So all those 10-inch compilation records, when they have to be filed alphabetically, they don't really fit properly, and it kind of bugs you that, you know, there's a B-side on there that's not belonging there. When you file them as B7 and B6, etc., they have a context. There's a lot of label comps. Jazz for Lovers on Riverside, 8 Ways to Cole Porter on Riverside, the Riverside Drive. This isn't a session with all those guys in it. It's just a bunch of tracks by each of those cats. Where do you file that? Sure, you could have a miscellaneous section, but you're just not going to play it. You're not going to really go through that section very often, and they're not going to really provide you any insight when they're just filed away in some miscellaneous box that they do when they're part of their sequence. You see what the label was doing and what it was up to at that point. And then lastly, the Jazz Lab. Guys like G.G. Grice and Donald Byrd, when you have a session like that, Benny Golson, Art Farmer, those records, who do you file those under? If you file all your G.G. Grice, Donald Byrd stuff under Donald Byrd, you're going to end up with a pretty small G.G. Grice section. And that was one of those things that always bothered me. It's like, this doesn't really feel like it should just be filed here under Donald Byrd. The Art Farmer Golson stuff shouldn't just be filed under Art Farmer. Benny Golson needs some of these in his section too. When you file them in the sequential order of the label release, they fit exactly where they belong. And some of this is just my minutia, my obsessive compulsive disorder, you know what I mean, I'm over organized. But the organization does lead to a high level of understanding and comprehension. And so, again, it takes you having a lot of labels and a lot of records on each label for it to really become the insight that it became for me. But every once in a while, I want to go back and see all my Art Blakey records together, all my Miles records together, all my Coltrane's in one spot. But then I realized that the work it would be, and almost every artist I can think of, there's a few records in there that I'm like, man, I don't know if I'd put that there or there. And you don't really have any of that debate when you have stuff filed this way. So it's just my way of doing it. There's no right or wrong way, absolutely. I'm just showing you some of the benefits of doing it the way I've been doing it. And I don't see myself going back to alphabetical anytime soon. Like I said, I get the itch once in a while, but I sure learn a lot by having it this way. So anyway, that's my my little issue on the great labels and why I have my records filed the way I do. It's not necessarily an easy no-brainer. I mean, you can certainly do it the alphabetical way. You can certainly do it, chronological, autobiographical. There's all kinds of ways you can file your record collection. But and then really, jazz is the only genre of music where doing it this way makes much sense. Rock bands are pretty much stable in their lineups, and a group is a group. So the Eagles records are going to be the Eagles no matter what label they're on. Iron Maiden, the Beatles. You want those groups to be together always. But most jazz people work with infinite different people, and a lot of the people they're working with at the time they're on a label is impacted by what label they're on. And so to have the label become the grouping, it just kind of really puts it all in the right place. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. It's kind of nonsense in some ways, file how you like to do it the best. But appreciate y'all checking in. I'm going to get back to my regular series coming up next week. Y'all have a good night. I'm Dan. I'm Jazz Shepherd. Peace.